Nigeria started on a very promising note in 1960 when the Union Jack was lowered and our green-white-green flag was hoisted. It's now 6 decades and 3 years after that historic moment. But is this the Nigeria our founding fathers fought for and handed over? Well, let me allow you to answer that question. You can join the conversation right now on X, formerly Twitter, using the hashtag Beyond100 Days. Remember to tag at TVC News NG. Happy Independence Anniversary, everyone. You're watching Beyond 100 Days with Nifemi Oguntoye. The 63rd Independence Anniversary, we understand that it's being celebrated in low-key, according to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume. It's in line with the present economic realities. Perhaps it's also a tip as to where we are 63 years after. And barring any last-minute changes, organized labor is due for a full-blown nationwide strike in less than 6 hours. The petrol subsidy removal is the issue here, but we understand that the president has approved 35,000 naira provisional wage increment for all Treasury-paid federal government workers for the next 6 months. And this is following federal government delegation meeting with the leadership of NLC and TUC on Sunday. According to the federal government, it's committed to the provision of funds for micro and small-scale enterprises, as well as waivers on VAT on diesel for the next 6 months. Also, the federal government announced it will commence payment of 75,000 naira to 15 million households at 25,000 naira per month for a 3-month period from October to December this year. The president mentioned in the speech on Sunday that the government will be commencing this month. The social safety net is expected to be extended to cover an additional 15 million vulnerable households. So perhaps we're probably going to be looking at double of that number for the households, if I'm correct. Earlier on Sunday, the federal government and organized labor met on measures to address the dispute that is ongoing, arising from the removal of subsidy on petrol and also some other critical issues. The federal government agreed to fast-track the provision of compressed natural gas buses to ease public transportation and also waive value-added tax on diesel for the next 6 months. A subcommittee will now be constituted to work out the details of implementation of all the items as we know them. That's what we're talking about this evening. We're looking at what's happening between Labour and federal government, but most importantly, we're also going to be talking about Nigeria at 63. Welcome on the program, everyone. I'm joined now to discuss this. Yemi Makpaderu is strategy and governance expert. Thank you for joining us on the program this evening. Also joining me is reputational risk management professional Oyekachi Adekoya. Gentlemen, happy Independence Anniversary to you. Mr. Makpaderu, let me begin with you. From 25,000 on Sunday, it became 35,000. I think from 25,000 to low-grade workers, it became 25,000 to all federal workers. But by this morning, we understand it's 35,000 naira across board. What do you make of this latest intervention by the federal government?
Yeah, thank you, Nifemi, for having me. Happy Independence to you and to Nigerians. And a big shout out to my friend and brother, Oyekachi. Nice to be on the same table this evening. Let me just start by saying that it is heartwarming that we are seeing some movement, in the negotiation between Labour and the federal government. I want to give a lot of kudos to the Labour movement, for being reasonable, for being responsible and responsive, even in the pursuit of better living conditions for the long-suffering Nigerian workers. I also am excited that the federal government of Nigeria, the executive in particular, with support, of the legislature, no doubt, has also uh, listened, to the yearnings of Nigerians. The president, in his independence speech, said that he has a feeling heart and a listening ear. And what that means is that Nigerians should not be in any doubt as to whether their president actually feels the pain, the pang, of the economic realities of today. What is even more, the decision or the agreement of the federal government to adjust upwardly all the monetary or financial palliatives, that it has or that is proposing based on labor's demand and the reality of the time is a further testimony to what can be done when government reduces, this high level of profligacy, which has permeated our system to the extent that public trust in political office holders, public officials, and indeed our public institutions have been greatly eroded. I also want to say that this offer, if it eventually, crystallizes, will also underscore the fidelity, of the president and his government to the promise that the proceeds from savings on subsidy on petroleum products will actually be, diverted to a large extent, to ensure the well-being and welfare, and of course, the security of Nigerians.
But the workers we're talking about, Mr. Makpaderu, are a very minute fraction of the Nigerian populace. So it begs the question of, are we saving money from subsidy to give to federal workers? The kind of implication or impact that saved money from petrol subsidy should be on a larger scale. Don't you agree?
Oh, perfectly. And I think that is also not lost on the government. We're just talking about one aspect, of the several interventions that the federal government has rolled out. Recall that before now, there has been an infrastructure, the level of infrastructure, infrastructure, talking about roads, hospitals, educational institutions, which are available, for the benefit of all Nigerians. Indeed, there is also a leg of the intervention, which is busing 1,000, to 15 million families. Potentially, that means we're going to be having close to 80 to 90 million Nigerians that will benefit from all of this. These are short-term measures to cushion, the effect of mobile to push the effect of this spiraling inflation and the cost, of particularly food items. But beyond all of these palliatives, it is our interventions. It is important that we begin to look at a more sustainable approach to ensuring that the well-being of Nigerians is greatly enhanced and their dignity is enhanced.
We're all looking forward to that, but there are some who would say there is the sense that government appears to be foot-dragging in implementing some of its intervention, particularly when you consider that this latest intervention is coming a few hours to a planned nationwide strike. But what do you think? How strategic is this nationwide strike at this time, if you are considering its economic implication on the people?
Well, I am not, a part of labor, but I'm aware that if body language is anything to go by, it is a possibility, really, that labor may give for the umpteenth time, really, benefit of the doubt to the government, because they know the implication of, the crippling on the economy. Has to resort, to strikes. And I must commend, the leadership of Labour that, yes, there have been several threats, of strikes before now, but they seem to have prevaricated, on the understanding that, government will respond and react to some of our demands. And I think the movement that we are seeing on the part of government, the commitment that we are seeing on the part of government, and the fact that the labor centers, the two major labor centers, have agreed to call an executive committee meeting of their unions today to table the promissory notes, as they refer to it, given by the president, and the delegation of the president, and representatives of the president, to their different for terms that there might just be an application of the brakes before the end of today on the proposed industrial action.
Well, interesting days ahead. We understand that organized labor is currently meeting with federal government delegation at the State House. Looking forward to what the decision will be as we count down to the 3rd of October. But right now, let's talk about independence anniversary. Nigerians born in 1960 are now 63 years old this year. Interestingly, that's higher than the current life expectancy in the country. And we can go on and on to talk about everything that is not working. But Nigeria has also survived the predictions of doomsayers in the area of its indivisibility. What would you say have worked in favor of the Nigerian project since independence? We're going to return to Mr. Makpaduru in the course of this conversation as we work on getting that connection clearer. If you're there, I was asking, what do you think has worked for us as a country? I mean, there are many people who had said that Nigeria wouldn't survive for this long. Irrespective of the ups and downs, we're still together as one entity 63 years later.
Well, for me, I think this is one of the things that we need to celebrate about Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the most diverse countries of the world. Over, 400, linguistic groups, in the country. Diversity in terms of religion, ethnicity, in terms of social configuration, and the rest of it. So I must say, for a nation that has survived a civil war and that has somehow kept its fabrics, together 50 years and over then, we should say that we have cause to be thankful. However, have we succeeded in building a nation? Have we succeeded in the task of nation building? Do we have, social cohesion in Nigeria today? The answer to me is certainly a no. But is there a desire, by Nigerians, or at least the critical mass of the people, to have Nigeria as an indivisible entity with, a higher level of fair equity and justice? I'll say yes. The cost of division is very high. Today, there's centripetal forces seem to be having, the bigger hand in the community of nations. So together, I believe that we are stronger. But again, people must have a sense that there will be equity, there will be justice, and there will be fairness. And I think the president also, alluded to this in his Independence Day address, that for for him, there shall be no form of discrimination, on any front in terms of the composition of his government, in terms of dispensation of patronage, and of course in the delivery of good governance. So that to me is reassuring, but we still have a long walk, to having a cohesive nation where there is a very high sense of patriotism and nationalism. But potentially, I see Nigeria remaining cohesive ad infinitum.
Well, so the first few years after independence, there was fiscal federalism under a regional structure, and that in some way promoted healthy competition in terms of socio-economic and, cultural, realities along regional lines. Do you agree with the school of thought that a distortion of that independence template is largely responsible for where we are right now as a nation?
Well, looking back, one would say that those who are pushing the argument of regionalism may have a point. But again, I ask myself, the regionalism lasted for just 6 years after independence. So what are those factors that led, to the disintegration, of our democracy of the First Republic? If indeed all were as rosy as we tend, to paint it now. There is a challenge that we have as human beings. Yesterday is always better, than today in the eyes of many. It's always the old days. Having said that, I think the conversation really should be around having a proper federal structure, which I believe, will ensure that centers of development are further devolved down to where the people feels it the most. It will interest you that in all of the conversations that we are having, the focus has been primarily on the federal government of Nigeria, whereas the federal government of Nigeria is not entitled to about 52% of the federally collected percent or thereabout go to the states and local government. And that is in addition to the internally generated revenues that these government centers, that accrues to them. So it is over the years, our over-centralization has made the people to not view the state and local government as, centers for progress and for development. And so this has left those who are at the helm at these levels to almost escape with blue murder, because we do not hold them responsible and accountable. And I think in moving forward, there has to be a change of mindset.
Indeed.
For people to know that indeed there are several layers of people that owe them obligation of service.
Absolutely.
And such centers should be held, accountable and responsible.
Let's attempt to bring in reputational risk management professional Oyekashi Adekoya in on this conversation. Mr. Adekoya, if you had an Hausa name, it would have been just perfect, on Independence Anniversary.
I do have one, actually. It's called Ndasu. So
Are you for real?
Oyekashi Ndasu Adekoya.
Only you, Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo. Well, we're going to talk about that later on. But speak to what's happening right now. We're trying to find out what has worked for us because, the conversation I've heard around has been what's not working, and that's a very easy one to have. But Africa has seen an increase in coup d'etat in recent years. But Nigeria has had successful democratic transitions, at least in the past 23 years thereabout. What do you think has worked, irrespective of the myriad of things that are not working?
Okay, I think I'd like to be very pragmatic here. First, we owe this democracy to those who fought very hard during what we call the June 12th debacle and crisis that we had in Nigeria. We are also blessed with a bit of diversity in that we have over 250 ethnic groups. So for you to maintain effective hold of the country, there must be some give and take. And so whether it's military or the civilian rule, you must reach across the different levers of power across the major ethnic grouping. And so that constant quest for some level of balance is what pushes some form of compromise in positions and has held Nigeria together for some time now. But more practically, if you look at the administration of Obasanjo then in 1999, he did do a lot to disincentivize the military from joining any crazy quest for a military rule. So basically what he did was to throw more incentives at the other ranks, knowing that it is the other rank soldiers who carry out the coup. And then, of course, the Nigerian military has undergone some major restructuring. It's very difficult to sink 2 or 3 divisions across the country and then implement a coup. So I think that from a very practical steps, there are a number of things working for us. But importantly, we've taken very proactive steps to ensure that a coup does not work here. So maybe that has played some strong part. I definitely feel so. As to what again has worked, I'm not sure that at $1 to 1,000 something, there's much we can point at. Even when I think it's Fitch or so did a rating and assessed that our effective unencumbered foreign reserves is about 3.3 billion thereabout. Not that to say that it's a problem created by this administration, but you can trace all the faults that we have back to 1986 when we started the structural adjustment program. So we remain a country that is in a bit of a paradoxical situation. There's lack in the midst of plenty. We have foreign interest operators that don't necessarily wish for Nigeria to raise their head above the current levels where we find ourselves. So for any president in Nigeria, it's an uphill climb, battling the centrifugal forces in the country and then battling international interest groups again for some stability. So
all right, let me just squeeze one more in, because we had difficulties connecting with you since the start of the show. But how significant will you say the echoes of secession are as they are today? Because there seems to be there's a semblance of progress. The military was just talking about an end to sit at home in the southeast region of Nigeria. But how much attention do you think Nigeria should be paying to this development, irrespective of the success you think it's made?
No, the question is, you must remember that if you did, I'm sure you did government in a secondary school, we were taught in social studies also, public opinion, what it is and what it is not. It's just generally a set of beliefs held by a few, fostered on the majority. So when you hear the shouts of division, you just look at it. It's a shout of interest. Whose interest is at stake? I don't think the people of the Southeast care too much about what's happening in Abuja, as they don't really care about what's happening in their state capitals. And that's the same thing to those in the Northeast or Northwest. All everybody wants is good governance. And so when the politicians in some part of the country fail at providing the dividends of democracy to their people, they can rather very quickly and conveniently point to the center and say, there you go, your problem is in Abuja. And I think that's part of the kind of politics that we play. When we emphasize and, regionalize every simple thing that government should do. So This call of divisions in Nigeria are not strong as we see them. Thankfully, I have some heritage from the Southeast, from the Southwest. I have businesses everywhere in this country, and Nigerians are Nigerians. A hospitable part of us is very strong. It's the politicians who are the noisemakers. Remember, Buhari then said he doesn't like to work with politicians because they are noisemakers. So if you hear that noise coming from a particular part of the country, it's just the noise before the settlement. So if you cry the loudest, then you get settled the most. For me, that's the distraction to the real issues. The real issues are the issue of governance and the betterment of the lives of the people of Nigeria. Wherever that comes from, I feel very strongly that the people will appreciate it and focus on the basic aspirations that they have.
So much task ahead of the Bola Tinubu administration. We wish him all the best. Onyekachi Adekoya, you added an Hausa name earlier. What did he say it is? Reputational risk management professional, thank you for joining us on the program. And also strategy and governance expert, Yemi Makpaderu. Mr. Makpaderu was saying hi to you earlier, but you were not online, Mr. Adekoya. Well, Mr. Makpaderu, thank you so much for talking to us as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that's our program today. You can watch it again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Happy Independence Anniversary, everyone. I'm Nifemi Oguntoye.